Hello Manjaro community, Philip Miller here. We're talking today about how to create your own Manjaro Spin. If you head over to our homepage, you might find already our flagship editions. These are KDE, GNOME or XFCE. Most of you guys wonder how we create those ISO images. So let's go over to our GitLab. There you might find the ISO profiles, which explains how we configure our ISO images. So in this particular, we have one file called profiles. In this you have a lot of switches you can change. Most of them you can keep as default. Then we have some switches for the live session. We also have a package list. So we have some tags there, which I explain to you later when we go through. And we have some profiles and configuration files. So first what we have to do is get the latest version of the profiles. So right click, copy, go to your favorite file browser and open a terminal and write git clone followed by that what you had copied. In this case, we will create a new folder called ISO profiles. So let's close the terminal and walk through that folder. In the folder, we have the shared folder, the Manjaro folder, community folder. The Git folder you can ignore, you don't need that. Then some README info and the repo. Let's walk through the shared folder. The shared folder has the basic packages, which are, for example, all the packages we have in our root image, all the packages we have for the Manjaro hardware detection tool, and we have some live packages when you have Xorg drivers and some without, plus some basic packages for the desktops. Inside of the Manjaro folder, we might have an overlay with standard default settings like the f-step, sudos, scale, and so on and so on. The more interesting folder is the Manjaro folder itself, where we store all the profiles. So let's take a closer look into the XFCE profile. When you are there, you find some folders here, which is the overlay folder and the desktop overlay folder. So for the live overlay folder, all the files you find here are specifically for the live session. So if you look at root, we have some config files. In this case, we have here added the Quantum theme for adapter for the root folder. So the user root will have that Quantum theme enabled. The ATSI, as you can see, it's a symlink. It goes back to the standard folder Manjaro, which has a standard scale we already know. We already talked about the profile conf, so let's take a closer look to it. As you can see here, most of them are default, so I don't have to change much of them. So in this case, I want to have the LightDM as a display manager. If I scroll down, we can see here all the systemd services I have enabled for that particular profile. And I want to disable the Pacman in it later on. For the OpenRC, we don't support it anymore, so most likely in the later version we will remove that. The live CD is default, so we use Manjaro as host, username and password. And for the groups and enable live sessions, everything is kept by default. Let's check out what is in the packages root file. As you can see, it's a symlink, so it goes to the shared folder. In this file you find all the basic packages like file system, then the kernel, the firmware, our hardware detection tool, Pacman, and so on. So these are the packages we are installing in the default. If we go over to the mhwd file, you see here all the packages we have on the live session. So in this case we install all the X drivers, and we have also NVIDIA drivers, Catalyst drivers here. So these getting installed as a repo, which will be used then by our hardware tool to detect your hardware. If you look at the packages live, we see here we install Calamaris as an installer, we have the Architect installer, we have some specific live packages to support Calamaris, and of course we have Cloudzilla also inside. So as you can see, we have here the overlay features. We have three. We have the root, we have the desktop, and we have the live overlay. For you, most to edit would be the desktop packages file. So if you look here, we have available all the network packages. We have some sound, audio, video packages for you. We have enabled the R support. We have added some fonts, some games, Java, printing, some display manager settings. We have GTK3 enabled, in this case the classic edition, which doesn't have this fancy overlay as you can see here, and access all the extra packages for XFCE desktop. We added some themes and also applications. What you might notice is over here this extra. If you type in the full ISO profile, all the extra packages will be installed. As you can see here, basic. If you have only want to do the minimal ISO, all packages with basic will be installed and extra will be skipped. If you have the full ISO image, the other way around will be the case. So you can see here some input drivers and the standard Xorg drivers here. So that's it for the configuration. Most likely you will be editing the desktop file and maybe the profile. So when we have everything set up here, we can give it a try run. So I won't change anything of the profile. So this was only to explain how we are build it up. Since we now talked about all the configuration we have to do for the ISO profiles, let's talk about the tool itself. We open a terminal and we check if we have installed the Manjaro Tools. In this case, I have. If not, you have to install Manjaro Tools ISO. This we can easily do with PAMAC. And as I already have it installed, it will skip it on my end. So this tool also has a configuration. You will find it in your home directory. So what configuration is important? First, we have the ISO profiles. In this case, I had to add the path where I stored it for this tutorial. And the second file we have to look at is the configuration file. So for our thing, we are doing build ISO. So we have here most of them can be kept at default. For my case, I want to create a preview 3 of the latest ISO. We have the Illira section and we have our branding. So most likely this is what we can use for the basic settings. And if we are on that point, we open the terminal and look at build ISO itself. For that, let's display the help. So we have here the profile, we have the architecture, we have the branch. We can switch, we can change the kernel, we can query the settings, and we can give more information about the profile in detail or make out a log. This is good to find error messages during the build procedure. What we also have here is disable clean work directory. If you don't pass that and you have an issue with building, for example, we have overlays, the standard root, the desktop, and the live session. If you want to change something there, it's really handy to keep the work directory intact. So first, we want to try to build the XFCE. So for that particular case, let's query what we have there. So this is the simple output. We have here the kernel we choose, so it's the latest. We have the branch unstable, as it is by the configuration file. And we have the architecture, which is the 64-bit. We will to build the previous 3 of the latest distro. And in this case, we have the minimal edition of the XFCE profile. If you do the same with the verbos, you can see here it's much more output. So we see also which systemd services we have enabled, which we have of those enabled for the live session. And if we want to do the full profile, we simply pass an F. As you can see here, the minimal tag is removed. So in this case, we will get all the extra packages for our build. For our particular case, let's do a standard minimal. So it will be simple to simply hit build ISO and it starts. The default profile is always XFCE. If you want to do KDE instead, you can pass KDE to do that. In the first run, we will build now the root directory. We will install for that particular case 228 packages in a shell root. And after that, it will build the same for the desktop. Now we are in the section to build the live overlay. In this case, we will install Calamaris, some KDE packages, and so on. Now we have configured all the overlay and we are now installing or getting all the drivers we have for the Manjaro hardware detection tool. So here we create now a local repository for all the drivers. Last but not least, we will do our kernel build for the live session. That all done, we will squash everything now in 3-layer images. So let's take a closer look to the ISO we have just created. In this case, I'm firing up VirtualBox. So let's check out if everything is functional. Looks like it. Now let's take a quick tour on the new ISO we have just built. So we have all the standard applications here. And as you can see here, it's really Spartan, minimal-like. Okay. So let's take a closer look into the cache directory of Manjaro Tools. So we have here our folders. You can see I have more than one installed already. And here we can see our file, which we have created. We have also the package list. So if you open that file, you will find all the details of all the packages you will find on that created ISO. And what we also have is the build directory. In this case, we check for the XFCE. We have here the ISO itself. So this is the layout we will find on our final ISO. We have here the mount directory, which is normally empty, because this is only temporary. And we have the architecture file folder where we find all the layers and the stages we did so far with the build tool. If you look here in the hardware detection tool layer, we see here we have here a standard repository for all the drivers. Then we have the live session overlay for calamaris and such. So let's change something simple. We go for the etc folder, open a terminal, and simply sudo touch something, which automatically create that file. We now can open the terminal and say build ISO C for keeping the settings or the overlays there. And it will now check everything. Everything is already built, but we can see here we changed something in the live overlay. In this case, it will re-squash our ISO for those changes. So this really is handy if you have some issues with the ISO or we want to change something last minute. This is a trick you can use. And for that, it's really fast, and I use it a lot to fix something which I've missed during testing. So this is all about how you build your first ISO with the Manjaro tools. Stay tuned for the next video and tell me in the feedback section what you think about those tutorial videos.